College life was treating me exceptionally well. Between the late-night pizza runs, impromptu road trips, and cramming sessions that turned into philosophical debates, I felt like I was living in a coming-of-age movie. My relationship with Lisa was the cherry on top. She was smart, funny, and living in another city pursuing her own dreams. The distance was tough, but we made it work with daily calls and weekend visits. One Friday evening, after acing a particularly brutal exam, I decided to surprise Lisa with a visit. I booked a train ticket and was on my way, imagining the look on her face when I showed up unannounced. Little did I know, surprises were in store for both of us. Upon arriving, I grabbed a coffee at a nearby cafe to kill some time before heading to her apartment. As I sipped my latte, I overheard a conversation at the next table. Two older gentlemen were discussing their dates with a girl named Lisa. My heart skipped a beat. Surely it couldn't be my Lisa. But the more they talked, the more details matched up. Curiosity, or perhaps masochism, got the better of me. I discreetly followed one of the men when he left, keeping a safe distance. To my disbelief, he led me straight to Lisa's apartment building. I watched as she greeted him at the door with a hug that was far too affectionate for a neighborly gesture. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of awe at the audacity of it all. But instead of confronting her right then and there, an idea began to form in my mind. If she wanted to play games, I could be a worthy opponent. Back at my place, I started crafting my plan. First, I needed to understand the playing field. A bit of online sleuthing led me to a sugar dating website, and with a few strategic clicks, I found Lisa's profile. She was operating under a pseudonym, but the photos left little room for doubt. I created my own profile, masquerading as Richard Lawson, a wealthy entrepreneur with a taste for fine art and a penchant for philanthropy. I used some stock photos of a distinguished-looking gentleman sipping whiskey in a library classic. I sent her a message, keeping it brief yet intriguing. Your profile caught my eye. Perhaps we can discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement over dinner? She responded within hours. Hook, line, and sinker. Over the next couple of weeks, we exchanged messages. She was flirtatious, clearly interested in the lavish lifestyle Richard could offer. I made sure to drop hints about owning a yacht and having connections in high places. It was almost too easy. I suggested we meet in person to discuss our arrangement. She eagerly agreed, and we set a date at an upscale restaurant in her city. I made a reservation under Richard's name and even arranged for a private dining room to add an air of exclusivity. On the day of the meeting, I arrived early and spoke to the restaurant manager. I explained that I was planning a surprise for a friend and needed his cooperation. Slipping him a generous tip helped seal the deal. Everything was set. Lisa arrived, dressed to the nines, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. She was escorted to the private room where I sat with my back facing the door. As she approached, I heard her greet Richard with a sultry hello. I stood up and turned around. The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, confusion, and a dash of horror. Hello, Lisa, I said, trying to keep a straight face. She stammered, What are you doing here? Where's Richard? I smirked. Surprise. Richard couldn't make it, but he sends his regards. She quickly regained her composure. So, you've been playing games? Me? Playing games? That's rich coming from someone juggling college and a side gig as a sugar baby, I retorted. Her eyes narrowed. You have no right to judge me. Perhaps not, but I do have the right to expose a fraud, she scoffed. What are you going to do? Tell everyone? I leaned in. Oh, I won't have to. You see, this dinner is being live-streamed. Her face turned pale. You're lying. I pointed to a discreet camera in the corner. Smile for the camera, sweetheart. Now, before anyone gets alarmed, I wasn't actually live-streaming. That would be illegal without her consent. But the bluff worked. She panicked. Why are you doing this? She pleaded. Consider it a lesson in honesty. Maybe next time you'll think twice before deceiving someone. She grabbed her purse and stood up. This isn't over, she hissed before storming out. I sighed, feeling a mix of triumph and melancholy. The waiter entered, looking awkward. Will the lady be returning? I shook my head. I don't think so, but you know what? I'll still have that steak. As I enjoyed my meal, I contemplated my next move. The plan had gone well so far, but I wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, I contacted the 2 sugar daddies I had overheard at the cafe. Posing as an anonymous tipster, I informed them that Lisa had been double dipping. They were less than pleased. One of them replied thanking me for the information and mentioning that he felt foolish for trusting her. The other didn't respond, but I noticed Lisa's profile disappeared shortly after. Feeling a tad guilty, I decided to focus on more productive endeavors. I channeled my energy into a coding project I'd been neglecting, a social app for college students to find study partners. To my surprise, it gained traction quickly. A few weeks later, I was invited to present my app at a tech conference in Lisa's city. I couldn't resist the irony. After my presentation, which went exceptionally well, I was approached by several investors. Among them was a familiar face, one of Lisa's former sugar daddies. He extended his hand. "Impressive work, young man." I shook it, a sly smile forming. "Thank you. Small world, isn't it?" He chuckled. "Indeed. Say, you wouldn't happen to know a Lisa, would you?" I feigned ignorance. "Lisa? Can't say I do. Why do you ask?" He sighed. "No reason. Just thought I recognized someone from your presentation photos." I shrugged it off and we parted ways. Later that evening, as I was packing up, I received a text from Lisa. "We need to talk." I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. "About what?" I replied. She responded, "I heard about your app. Congratulations." "Thanks," I typed back, keeping it curt. She sent another message. "I made a mistake. Can we meet?" I thought about it for a moment before replying, "I don't think that's a good idea." She insisted, "Please, just one conversation." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe neutral territory. She looked different, perhaps a bit worn. "I've lost a lot lately," she began. I raised an eyebrow. "Actions have consequences." She nodded. "I know I was wrong to deceive you." I sipped my coffee. "And the others?" She sighed. "I've cut ties. I'm trying to start fresh." There was a vulnerability in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Why tell me all this?" I asked. "Because I want to make amends. I miss what we had." I leaned back. "Lisa, trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can fix it, but you'll always see the cracks." She looked down. "I understand." I stood up. "I wish you the best, truly, but I think it's time we both move on." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The chapter was finally closed. Months went by. My app became a staple on campuses nationwide. I was busier than ever, but genuinely happy. One day, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Lisa. "Dear Alex, I wanted to thank you. Losing everything made me realize what truly matters. I'm back in school, focusing on my degree. I hope someday you can forgive me. All the best. Lisa." I smiled, folding the note and tucking it away. Forgiveness might come someday, but for now I was content. Looking back, the whole ordeal taught me valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the unexpected twists life can throw our way. And if I ever find myself in a similar situation again, well, let's just say I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve. So there you have it, Reddit. That's how I turned a cheating girlfriend into motivation for creating a successful app and, in a roundabout way, helped her get back on track. Life's funny like that. Life has a funny way of moving on whether you're ready or not. After the whole episode with Lisa, I threw myself into my work. The app was expanding rapidly, and I was juggling meetings with investors, interviews with tech magazines, and the day-to-day chaos of running a startup. It was exhilarating and exhausting all at once. One afternoon, I found myself back at that same cafe where I'd first overheard the 2 sugar daddies discussing Lisa. This time, though, I was the one being overheard. A group of students at the next table were excitedly chatting about my app, unaware that I was sitting right there. It was surreal. "Did you hear the founder is just a college student? Talk about genius," one of them exclaimed. I couldn't help but smile. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. It reminded me of how far I'd come since that fateful day. As the weeks turned into months, I started receiving invitations to speak at other universities. Sharing my journey became a way to inspire others, and in turn, I found myself growing from the experience. During one such event, I met Emily, a fellow entrepreneur with a startup focused on sustainable fashion. She was witty, passionate, and refreshingly genuine. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our mutual love for late-night coding and bad sci-fi movies. There was an ease to our conversations that I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, after a particularly long brainstorming session, we decided to take a walk through the city. "You know," she began, "it's rare to find someone who understands the craziness of startup life." I laughed. "Tell me about it. Most people think it's all glamour, but they don't see the 3 a.m. debugging marathons." She smiled. "Exactly. It's nice not having to explain that." As our friendship deepened, I realized that the walls I'd built up after Lisa were starting to come down. Emily wasn't just a distraction. She was someone who challenged me, who made me want to be better, not out of spite or revenge, but because she believed in me. One day, I decided to tell her about everything that had happened with Lisa. Not the abridged version I'd shared in interviews, but the full story, the betrayal, the revenge, the aftermath. She listened intently, her eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, she took a deep breath. "That must have been tough," she said softly. "It was," I admitted, "but in a twisted way it pushed me to where I am now." She nodded. "I get that. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best outcomes." There was a moment of comfortable silence before she added, "But you know, not everyone is like Lisa." I looked at her, sensing the underlying meaning. "I know," I replied, "and I'm glad I met someone who reminds me of that." As things progressed with Emily, I found a balance I'd been missing. Work was still hectic, but it no longer consumed me entirely. We collaborated on a project combining our apps, a platform promoting sustainable study resources. It was a hit, further cementing our professional and personal connection. One evening, while we were celebrating the launch of our joint project, I received another letter from Lisa. This time, it was an invitation to her graduation. She'd completed her degree and was hosting a small gathering. "Are you going to go?" Emily asked when I showed her the invitation. I shrugged. "I'm not sure. Part of me feels like that chapter is closed." Emily considered this. "Closure can be important. Maybe attending could give you that." So, I decided to go. The gathering was modest, held at a community hall near her university. When I arrived, Lisa greeted me with a tentative smile. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Congratulations," I replied genuinely. We spent a few minutes catching up. She told me about her plans to work with a nonprofit organization, helping underprivileged students. It was a far cry from the person I'd known before. "I'm trying to make amends," she said, almost reading my thoughts. "I can see that," I replied. As the evening wound down, Lisa turned to me. "Thank you for being here. It means more than you know." I nodded. "I think we both learned a lot from everything that happened." She smiled softly. "I agree. I wish you all the happiness, Alex." "You too, Lisa." Walking out of the hall, I felt a sense of peace. The lingering resentment and hurt seemed to have dissipated. Meeting Emily, focusing on my passions, and even reconciling with Lisa in a way, all of it contributed to a newfound contentment. Back in the car, I sent a text to Emily. "Heading back, it went well. See you soon." "Can't wait," she replied with a heart emoji. As I drove away, I realized that life is less about the setbacks and more about how you move forward. People make mistakes, ourselves included, but every experience shapes us, teaches us, and sometimes, if we're lucky, leads us to better places and better people. Looking ahead, I was excited for what the future held, not just in business, but in life. And this time I was ready to embrace it fully, no revenge plots required.